Welcome to the Gladiator PvE build for the Magic-based Templar class in the Elder Scrolls Online Update 29 Flames of Ambition. This video will be a deep dive into all things Magplar PvE. This build is primarily intended for solo play, but can also be used in dungeons and modified for trials as well. So if you're looking for a lot of detail on what, why, and how to run a Magplar based on the content you're playing, this is the video for you. Timestamps are below if you wish to skip ahead. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, turn alerts on, and consider clicking that join button so I can produce more Elder Scrolls Online content. So here we are with the Magplar. I'm going to show you all of the end game things that I'm using to complete some of this solo content in dungeons. But before we do that, I want to go over if this build looks good, you want to use it, what do you need to do while leveling to get there? Just like my healer build, if you watched it, the most important thing while leveling is knowing what you're going to do at endgame. A lot of people do not slot all three class skill lines on their bar. You want to have at least one class skill line on your bar. That way your entire leveling experience, you're going to get these leveled up. Reason being is these passives are critical to the success of your character. So priority number one is to unlock 3 abilities. Templar has some of the best 3 right away. Immediately slot those on your bar. Next up, weapon skill line, you're going to take 2. Destruction Staff, which you're primarily going to use, but also it's a handy idea to get Restoration Staff. You're going to equip a Destruction Staff while you're playing the entire time, but having a Restoration Staff, just doing 1 or 2 quests to get a skill unlocked, then putting it on your bar, it will be a dead slot. But what will happen is this will level up throughout the entirety. So what you're going to do at endgame is you're basically going to get all of these leveled up, your class skill lines, so you can get all the juicy passives. You're going to have a Destro, Resto already leveled up. And when you slot an ultimate here, one's actually going to level up faster since there will be technically 2 since you have 6 slots. I highly recommend doing this. Otherwise, you're going to get to endgame and have to go back, grind at level 50 to level up your skills and morphs. Some other things you're going to need to consider leveling is Undaunted skill line. Mystic Orbs here, we're going to get to a little bit later. It is fantastic in solo and group play. Not to mention these passives are really good as well. If you put your tooltip on it, basically it improves by completing dungeons. You'll notice it says group dungeons. It does not say veteran only. So you can bang out all those normal group dungeons while you're leveling or when you hit 50, and you get a ton of Undaunted. So consider doing this a priority while you're leveling and then hitting all of those so you can max this out, get this really good skill here, get these passives, and your character will be very powerful. A couple of other annoying ones, Mages Guild, you have to go drive around and ride around, look for lore books all day, but you gotta have this sucker. A couple of the abilities are great. Shooting Star, you can flex this in or out, but the passives are really nice, especially if you're gonna slot a Mages Guild, and you're probably gonna use this whether it's PvE or PvP, so it's worth getting leveled, though it does take a lot of time. Another thing that takes a long time is Psijic Order. This isn't super imperative. Race Against Time can be handy. Some of these other things can be handy. But if you have the time to do this and you want to unlock this, it could be great at endgame, especially the speed boost. Fighters Guild typically levels passively because you're going to kill Daedra throughout your leveling experience. So I would definitely consider doing this. And even as a magic-based class, all of these abilities are actually really good. So if you get Fighters Guild going, consider slotting it here and there just to get the morph, so when you reach endgame, again, you'll have access to these abilities and don't have to hit endgame, go back, grind to level up Barb Trap. Another one you're going to want to consider is Alchemy, medicinal use. Potions last longer, meaning you'll have more spell power, more crit. If you don't have any way to get it, you're using spell power potions for that specific effect, plus magic regeneration. So it's kind of a pain. I have a different video on that, how to grind this up, but it's very helpful if this is going to be a top tier character for you. And then armor passives, another thing you want to do, light armor. Obviously we're going to use 5 light. I still like 5-1-1, and the reason why is the Undaunted passives down here. They give you more max stats. So with that being said, with the armor, another thing you can do, I talked about the 3 class skill lines, put them on your bar. Another trick I like to do is put 5 light on my bar, or my character, and then 1 medium, 1 heavy. That way I'm slowly leveling the skill line throughout the game. So when you hit end game, Do you need a lot of medium armor passives? No, but some of them actually will help you. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny bit, but every little bit helps, especially these heavy armor ones. Even if you're wearing one, guess what? A little more health recovery is great. A little more resistance is great. So not critical to your overall success, but every ounce helps. Okay, now we're going to move on to the gear section and cover that in detail. Okay, we're in the gear now for this build, and I'm going to give you basically 3 setups that I run. We're going to start with the secondary setup. So I have used this to get a trifecta VMA and to get veteran Vashram completed. I get a speed run. I haven't got no death and all that yet because I just don't remember the mechanics as much. But this is very, very successful, but it's not best in slot. So I'm going to show you this. Timestamps are below if you want best in slot. So what I'm using, what I have been using because I don't have access to the other gear. 2 5P sets, active on my front bar. New Moon's Acolyte. Very simple. Adds a lot of weapon and spell damage, but it increases the cost of your abilities by 5%. I'm going to show you in the gear section kind of how we get around this, but it's a strong offensive set. It's craftable. It's very easy to get. You notice I have Divine's traits, and I have all max Magicka enchants. 5-1-1 setup. So 5 New Moon, so 3 body pieces, 1 staff. The options in staff, there is quite a lot of options now, primarily due to the changes here in elemental status effects. So if we go to the help, elemental status effects here, got help, combat, fire, target burns for additional damage. Okay, more damage, great. Shock, instant damage, applies minor vuln, great. Frost, minor maim, reduces target's damage done. While wielding a frost, you also apply minor brittle, increasing the damage done to the target. So frost staff, you block with it and you use magic. That's very nice for people that are new to mechanics or are struggling to survive, or maybe they dodge, block too much, sprint, and they're running out of juice. So don't think, oh, this is what everyone tells me to run, I have to run this. Ultimately, you're going to hear this throughout this video. If you're not able to complete the content you want to do because you're dying all the time, stop worrying about what everyone else is telling you to do. Find something that's a little bit more defensive, like Frost Staff, as you can block, use magic. You're not going to run out of stamina. It has some cool buffs and debuffs on the targets. So if you need to sacrifice a little damage to survive, do it. Then as you get better and more proficient, now you can start moving up to fire and shock staff. So when I kind of proficient at this build, so I went with fire. I like the damage. Nirnhone with a lightning staff on my back bar. And a flame damage enchant. This isn't out of the ordinary, but I do have a frost staff, and I'm going to try to use that on Vashram to see if it does make a difference in my survivability. Also, a fully charged heavy attack with the frost is really nice. So we go to weapons, destruction staff. Let's see, trifocus here. Fully charged ice staff heavy attacks grants you a nice damage shield. So that can be very, very nice. You see the fire staff fully charges a lot more damage, but if you're having trouble surviving, put that ice staff on your bar. It can make a big difference. Okay, so that's the New Moon setup. And then Mother Sorrow, running a lot of crit. It's kind of the meta set to get, and you can use it at endgame. Some of it's best in slot. It's pretty easy and available to get. Divines, I go 5 pieces, so 2 on my body, and then 3 jewelry. With this, you can run all spell damage or 1 recovery, and then 2 spell damage. Once you get more familiar with this and how to play it and use the skills to sustain, you can drop that 1 recovery for additional damage. But as you start off, you might want to have at least one jewelry, enchanted magic recovery, because it's going to take a minute to get used to how to play this. So craftable set, overland set, really easy to obtain. Grothar, this thing is nasty. What's really good about it is dungeons, the solos, arenas, and so forth. There's tons and tons of mobs. There's tons and tons of ads. What this does in combination with our solar barrage is melt everything around us. We're playing this Magic Templar pretty much primarily melee. So when Grothar procs, because I do damage, and I have Solar Barrage up for 10 seconds, I can sit there and hit sweeps, and everything in a radius is taking damage from 2 effects. If I hit it with a sweeps, now it's taking 3 sources of damage. I got my blockade down, I got a spear down. You're looking up getting a lot of sources of damage. And you'll notice a big increase in things dying by putting Grothars on. There's a bunch of different options here. Grothar, by far my favorite, but you could run Zons for more single target. You could run Engine Guardian for more selfish sustain. Play around with it. Valkynscoria is not really that meta, but I would say Grothars and what I've tried is incredibly good. Back bar, Lightning Staff. We got Infused Maelstrom. I don't have Perfected yet, I don't think. So you're going to want to have that on the back bar because it's really nice, that Crushing Wall set. It's very good to have. So Infuse I like with the spell damage. So if you go back to your back bar, just light attack to pop that spell damage increase with Infuse, get a nice big damage burst, and then bar swap back over and do your primary damage. It's going to hit like a truck. Grothar proc, Solar Barrage goes, things will absolutely melt. The downside of this build is, well, it doesn't have all the meta sets. So I don't have Ring of Pale Order, which I'm going to go over. I don't have the False Gods, which I'm going to go over. So I'm lacking in self-healing compared to the meta popular sets, and I'm lacking in resource sustain. So I'm going to have to make both those things up in the abilities. But this is what I've run. It works. So if you don't have access to the God tier stuff yet, like me, don't feel like you can't do some of this stuff and try it, because it works for me. I play a lot. I've learned a lot. But there's something else to strive to, and that's optimal. So the optimal set, Ring of Pale Order. This is basically like Crit Surge on any class. If you're not familiar with Crit Surge, it just keeps you up for doing damage, an incredible amount. So for solo play, you just cannot beat this. The difference is when you got this, you're going to have to re-enchant it. You're probably going to have to change the trait maybe. It's going to have kind of a more complex gear setup since you have one jewelry and you're not running 3 jewelry and 2 body pieces. So really you're going to have one offensive set active on your front bar, kind of like we already do, and then our Maelstrom on our back bar. But you need to strive for this. I'm still working on collecting this, and I'm telling you, I've seen it in action. It just carries people through. So if you can't do trials and you don't want to run any other options, at least get this, because this is not really combat dependent. So take the time. I need to do this as well to get the Pale Order ring, because it's very forgiving for solo play. False Gods Devotion. So this one is also really good. It's basically Vicious Ophidian for magic users, which I've always wanted. On my Templar, I'm slow. Looking at that juicy Major Expedition for 8 seconds is incredible. And then also magic sustain. So with the combination of Pale Order and False Gods with Mother Sorrow, you have crazy sustain, crazy survivability. What that allows you to do is change up your skills and some of the other things you're using, like food, to push the damage even further. The more damage you do, the easier this stuff will be. So if you can sustain just by passively doing damage, if you're just killing mobs and instantly filling up your magic with potions and doing that, it'll be way easier to get this. False Gods, I don't have it, but you can actually do pickup groups to do these trials. I don't need Perfected. I don't do veteran trials per se, but I've done plenty of normal ones. Not this one specifically, Sunspire, but feel free to try to pick up group this. Just in Craglorn, people are typing in zone, see if you can get a group together. Because even just a normal setup, 5 normal would be just good enough for me. And then I can work towards getting that Perfected later on. But pug it, get this stuff, put 5 pieces on. I've seen people just do crazy stuff with the Pale Order and the False Gods, which leaves the other set to run, and that would be Mother Sorrow. So you can do on Destruction Staff, 2 jewelry, and then a body piece. So it's only going to be active on the front bar, which is your damage bar anyways. Back is kind of more your buff Maelstrom Lightning Staff. Again, you can try 2 different staff options. I'm going to stick with Inferno for damage, but you can do Frost if you're a little squishier. And that's really the optimal way to play this, and I'm working towards. So I would strive for that. If you have that available, I would use that to start. Another option for beginners here is Engine Guardian. So if you watch some of my videos, I completed VMA with no CP recently, and I was able to do this playing more defensively because VMA does not really have a damage check. It may take you a lot longer, it may take you a lot of deaths, you may be frustrated, but there's not one instance where you have to do a certain amount of damage in a certain amount of time. So if you know the mechanics, you know your build and your class really well, and you have infinite sustain essentially, you can sit there for 3 hours and get it done. And that's what I did, basically. Hour and a half, I think, hour and 15 minutes. And I did that through Engine Guardian. No champion points, your sustain's going to be hurt. So is your healing. This thing, selfish, but if we're in a solo instance, it's fantastic. Also, if you're dying all the time, you're running out of juice, you only got 300 champion points, swap this in instead of Grothars. If you don't have Grothars, or it's not working for you, and you're dying all the time, try Engine Guardian or another set. The changes I made to complete no CP was literally just doing the Engine Guardian 2-piece here, and I did go a Restoration Staff. So instead of the double Destro, I made things much, much simpler. So I put the New Moons on the front, and I put a Restoration Staff on the back. There's a bunch of different options that you have, but let's look over it. Restoration Staff here. This is for the rapid ability that you can cast. So if you cast it, it's going to give you tons and tons of sustain. Restores 500 Magicka. And also that heal is fantastic for new players because you want your build and your loadout to be pretty forgiving. So I go with a Resto Staff on my back bar. Bait Stram, I've tried that, but Quick Siphon just isn't cutting it. And then Master's Resto, well, you're not going to be doing healing springs per se, so I wouldn't do that. If you have access to this, I put on my back bar, or you could even do New Moons Restoration Staff and just be a little bit cost hindrance, or another. You could do Willpower on the back bar as well because it give you more max stats. But I would swap out Grothar for Engine Guardian. I would put Restoration Staff back on. You can use this to complete no CP, or if you're a beginner. If you're dying all the time, you're not having fun, swap that out. Try something more defensive. As you learn the class, as you get better, then swap in more damage stuff. Then swap in more buffs, more cooldowns, more bells and whistles. Because ultimately, there's levels to this. And so start with the basics, the beginner level, and work up. Because if I can complete no CP with it, you can too. Now let's break down the skills. Okay, I got a bunch of different setups for skill. I'm going to start with what I think is most effective for Vaitram, for the way I play, and then we're gonna change things out for no CP, VMA, and dungeon. Working left to right. Number 1, Consuming Trap. You can find this in the Soul Magic. Soul Magic levels up by completing main quest. You get this right away. As soon as you come out of the tutorial, bang, you have this and you can slot on your bar. When you morph this, you'll have one morph option that fills a soul gem, heals you, but also restores Magicka and stamina. Incredible. It's scaled off your max stat. So, if we're playing solo and don't have access to the False God set, this is our primary sustain tool. Notice that it actually does decent amount of damage over time as well. So, it's a decent dot, not as good as Reflective Light or Vampire's Bane or some other ones, but it's enough to do enough damage and also sustain us and heal us. It's an incredible ability, plus its range. So kind of what I always do in VMA or Bait is like put this on an ad I know is going to die quick, throw another dot on them, or put them in the blockade, and I just walk away. So they're going to die, boom, I'm going to get burst heal. Another thing, you got to think about the stamina return. You're going to be CC'd, you're going to be dodging, you're going to be blocking, you're going to be running out of juice on stamina. So having something like this, then not only can you restore a lot of Magicka, look at how much magic that is, but the stamina. So again, if you have the False God set, consider this as a flex spot because you can run more damage ability instead of this, primarily because you have infinite sustain as long as you're killing mobs with the False God set. What I would swap in instead of that, the Mystic Orb is utterly insane. Not only is it great single target damage, you look at the tooltip here. Duration 10 seconds. Okay, great. Radius 8 seconds. That is massive, massive radius. But look at the damage. Notice it ticks every half second in an AoE. So if you cast this on a single target, do a comparison. Cast Mystic Orb once, cast Elemental Blockade once. See what does more damage. Single target. It's going to be Mystic Orb, or at least it was for me. The cost is really expensive, so you want to be kind of liberal with this. This is why I don't use it in Vate, because I don't have the optimal gear set. But if you did, and you wanted super crazy damage, I would swap this in instead of Consuming Trap. But if you're struggling to heal yourself, you don't have Pale Order, I would consider keeping Consuming Trap as well. Speaking of healing yourself and not having Pale Order, kind of salty about that, is Purifying Light. So I made this one swap, my third time playing, I got a speed run. Reason why is Purifying Light for me did not work in VMA, I thought, because the ads died a lot quicker. The reason I was struggling in Vate was the boss fights last a lot longer. So if I'm standing in melee range, I need something that can heal me beyond puncturing sweeps. Purifying Light, think of it as a balloon. As damage goes, the balloon fills up. After 6 seconds, it pops, dealing a lot of damage back. But really, it's damage, it's low cost, it procs Dawn's Wrath passives, and leaves a heal at her feet. So when we're playing melee range in Vate, and we're going up these bosses toe-to-toe with our puncturing sweeps, this will passively heal us a tremendous amount. The duration is really useful for the combat rotation. I'll show you in a minute. And again, the passives here, you got to read these things. Casting Dawn's Wrath generates ult. Great. Guess what? Every 6 seconds. Our cooldown is every 6 seconds. And then Casting a Dawn's Wrath grants you minor sorcery, 20 seconds. So we got major and minor coming in because of Casting Dawn's Wrath ability. So it's fantastic to cast this. Healing, damage, low cost, really, really good. What I do change out though with this is when I'm doing VMA, I do Reflective Light. Reason being is one Reflective Light and then Consuming Trap can almost kill any of the mobs and give me back as much resources I use to cast both of them pretty much. So I'll put Reflective Light on here instead of Purifying Light because the bosses aren't as scary to me. It's the ads I need to kill at range a lot more. So Vate, put this on for the extra healing. It's low cost. VMA, I need that range and to kill ads, a lot of them. So Reflective Lights. Destro. Now, Elemental Drain. Elemental Drain's fantastic. Minor Magic Steal, 23 seconds. So restoring magic when you hit them. This is why light attack weaving in between is very useful. And then also the Major Breach. So Major Breach is usually provided in a raid by a tank or a healer or someone else is going to provide this debuff. But when you're playing solo, it's just you. So adding this much resistance, reducing the resistance by this much, you will hit a hell of a lot harder. Plus, if you're light attack weaving in between or heavy attack weaving, you'll do a lot better on resource sustain. So as you improve, you will do a lot more damage and you're going to try to light attack weave more frequently. You know, when I came back to the game, I was kind of heebie-jeebie and just kind of getting worried and stuttering and so forth. But now as the skills are coming back, I'm doing light attack weaves in between because it's going to help my sustain. Again, you combine this, False Gods, and some of the other sustain tools we have, then we can swap in some of the other sets and go even more offensive because we're just getting better at sustaining passively through Elemental Drain, just doing light attack weave. And old Puncturing Sweeps, my favorite ability probably in the game. What's so fun is it's a massive area, but it heals you for the damage done. So that's really what it's good, and that's why the Templar is pretty forgiving. VMA seems really range dependent, where I do a lot better on Vate in melee, it seems like, because I'm just going toe-to-toe with the bosses. So I like Puncturing Sweeps for both builds. It's a no-brainer. It's spammable if you like playing melee. Some obvious good passives here. Gain minor protection when using it. So you're probably going to use this every 6 seconds, or Blazing Spear. A great reason to have them both on your bar. When you deal damage in succession, you get a proc Burning Light. That's your heavy hit or your bursting tool of Puncturing Sweeps here. And then increase your crit damage by 10%. So you'll notice that's why we have one Adric Spear ability on our bar, one on our back bar, is to get that passive here. Makes it very, very useful. Last ability up is Beam. Beam Supreme. Radiant Glory is incredible because it heals you. So the PvE group trial morph of this will do more damage, but when you're playing solo, I cannot recommend this enough. If you get close to execute, about 40, 30, even 20%, you reapply all your buffs, you drop the house with an alt, and you just beam and do light attacks in between, it'll carry you, because the lower they get, the more this is going to heal you back. So kind of like Puncturing Sweeps in the fact that it heals you based off the damage done. Lower they get, it's going to keep on healing you like a truck. And this thing I've seen solo hit for 45k. So 21% of 45k is a lot of healing. And if you can channel this at the right time, not get caught in animation, you'll do very, very good in those boss executes. Now you have some options in terms of what to set up here. Shooting Star. Why do I have Shooting Star up here? Couple reasons. One, I like the stun. So I don't have all the best in-slot gear, so I'm not killing everything right away. And I need a lower cost ultimate than Destruction Staff. This is it, and it stuns them. So if mobs are overwhelming me, I'll use a Shooting Star over Destro, considering I may not kill them all, because I just need something to stun and take the pressure off me for 2 seconds while I get my resources back or get my wits back. Plus, having it slotted up here will give us some more max magic. It's 2%. It's not crazy amount more, but it's something more on our main offensive bar. So a lot of people run Destro up here. Crescent Suite's great because it's very low cost. And if you drop your Destro or your Meteor and you have this as your back bar, your front bar ultimate, it's very low cost. So hypothetically, you could do 2 of these in a major boss fight because it's such a low cost and give you that extra damage boost to push through during the execute. But I really haven't used anything beyond Shooting Star and Destro ult. When I was very first in there, I used Remembrance on my back bar just because I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So if you don't know what the hell you're doing, I would use Remembrance. It sounds goofy, but having an offensive ultimate on the front and then a defensive ultimate on the back can just buy you some time. Because if you're doing VMA, there's no DPS check. It's just about surviving and killing things slowly. Yes, if you're one of the top tier players, you can kill things fast and know exactly where the spawns are and everything else, but I assume you want something to get by. And Remembrance, don't be afraid to use it. I don't care if anyone else isn't using it. If it gets you through a wave, a spawn, a round, pop that sucker, live to fight another day, get past it, okay? So offensive, at least one offensive on the front, and then a defensive back if you're a beginner. Let's start at our back bar here. Elemental Rage, Destro ult. The Lightning Staff has 2 extra seconds on this, so it makes it massive benefit to run that on the back bar. 237 ultimate cost with our passive, so it is a heavy hitter. You're going to want to save this for boss rounds, boss executes, or just massive trash pulls you can't finish off yourself, because it's going to just nuke things in a massive area in 9 seconds is usually pretty good because bosses don't teleport typically in that duration. So you're going to want to pop this when you know someone's standing still. Drop it, massive area, quick damage, and having a Lightning Staff adds 2 seconds. That's nice. An alternative to that is Dawn's Wrath Solar Prison. So you can use the other morph. The only reason you'd use this is the major main, reducing the damage done. It's 1 second longer. It has the same ultimate cost, but it does a lot less damage. This is more for group play, or if you don't have access to the Destruction Staff ult, great AoE, but it's just not nearly as damage producing as Thunderous Rage. Unstable Wall of Storm, I run a Lightning Staff because I want to get that off balance chance. Concussed enemies are off balance for 7 seconds. Also, with Thunderous Rage, adding 2 seconds to our Destro ult is very, very nice. But you can play with a Frost Staff and get a damage shield if you want, be a little more defensive. I really like this. It's great damage, 10-second duration, in a massive area. Consider this a must, both single target and AoE. Next up, we got Blazing Spear. This is really nice. So it's a good damage over time. No longer stuns, which it used to stun, which is really, really nice. You don't care about the synergy. You don't care about anything. It does a lot of AoE damage up front. So while you're closing the distance, this is helpful. You're not in melee range. You're going to start the fight by chucking a spear and casting your buffs, close the distance, and then damage over time for 10 seconds. So you'll notice this duration, 10 seconds, this duration, 10 seconds. Very, very helpful. And then our last ability that's 10 seconds on our back bar, Dawn's Wrath Solar Barrage, 10 seconds. So the cooldowns align very, very well with actually casting this and getting it very, very simple. So this is a very simple setup on my back bar because I know 1, 2, 3, right? So that's why I have it set up there. It works for me and it's simple. Solar Barrage, it does a massive amount of magic damage every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. Pair this with your Grothar, just try it. I'm telling you, just try it. It will melt things, especially in VMA. comes with another benefit of gaining in power, so increasing your light and heavy attacks by 40%. So if you're weaving, especially with elemental drain on target, you're getting magic back. Those light and heavy attacks will hit really hard, especially if your enchant procs. I'm telling you, you got to do it because it will do a lot of damage. So this buffs not only your AoE damage, not only your single target damage, but your light and heavy attacks. It's just a must-have ability. You got to keep up at all times if you can. And you'll hear the sound. You'll kind of get used to the animation and seeing it, and it'll bug you if it's not up because things won't be dying nearly as quick. And then we're talking about channel focus here. Your main sustain tool and survivability tool, Major Resolve, so it increases your physical and spell resistance and gives you a lot of magic recovery back. Standing in the rune also increases it further. So talk about setting the house down, very low cost, very long duration. You can step out, come back in, but really you're going to want to set this up once you get kind of centered on where you're going to be fighting. Put this down and then recast it once you get moving again. A lot of these fights are high mobility, but if you're doing VMA, primarily you're standing in the same spots except for a few rounds. So I always cast this down or try my best and then do my ground effect AoEs here right after, and then that will just melt everything. Also, you're going to have minor mending for being in this sacred ground passive here, so make sure you have channel focus on, because if you're passively healing using puncturing sweeps, the purifying lights on the ground, or whatever you got going on, it's great. It will increase your healing. So put it down. Makes you tankier, gives you resources, increases your healing. No brainer. And I skipped over Harness Magic. Harness Magic here is a tool you can use for survivability. And so my back bar, when I'm taking a lot of pressure, what I'll do is I'll flip to my back bar and I will cast this first. Reason being, I get 6 seconds. So the damage shield isn't incredibly massive, but it's enough to let me breathe. So I cast this first, then I cast my 1, my 2, my 3. By that time, usually the shield is down. If I'm health bar down to 50%, I'll cast it again. Then I'll switch bars and go into my offensive rotation. So when you're getting a lot of pressure and you don't have that pale order ring, you go to your back bar, cast it just instinctively. If you're getting a lot of pressure, then 1, 2, 3, and I'll show you how to do this. So damage shield, it's really, really good. I just can't say enough about it. But if you're not doing solo content and you're doing more or less trial or something like that, and you have a dedicated healer that's really, really good, you can use Barb Trap here. Reason you're using it is really for minor force, increasing your crit damage by 10%. So the physical damage is, fine, but it's really that critical damage. So when you're on top of a boss and you're doing your buffs and your rotations, you plop this down, and it's a very, very long duration. So I really like that. On the back bar, if you're 100% safe. So if I'm playing solo or people I don't know and they're inexperienced, I just go with Harness Magic because I'd rather stay alive indefinitely than not. So I'll give you a couple options here on Mundus Stones. Primarily what I'm going to run on solo is the Lover for spell penetration. When you're playing really coordinated trials groups with people that are dedicated healers and tanks running specific debuffs and squeezing every ounce of performance, this isn't really going to apply because there's not really over penetration in this game. So you don't want unlimited amount of this, where solo it's really advantageous both in champion points and this, because every little ounce of this goes much, much further than, say, spell damage. The advantage of spell damage is it applies to both your damage done and your healing. So that's kind of what I use. Spell damage, the Apprentice, for PvP, but for PvE solo, I highly recommend the Lover. Another option, you can go with the Thief for more crit, the Shadow for more crit damage, but solo play, I would err on the Lover for sure. Consumable choices that I run on this build. So you notice I had 24k health, and that's pretty good threshold. Anything above 22, 23k, it feels pretty strong. Where if you get hit pretty hard, you're not going to just be down to nothing. So I recommend at least 22k above until you get comfortable. How I do this is the Clockwork Citrus Fillet. Increase max health by a little bit, but health recovery, fantastic. Max magic increase and magic recovery. That's fantastic stats that we need to optimize this build. If you're running something that can provide all the sustain for you, you could always go bi-stat or tri-stat. So bi-stat, the max pools are going to be much higher. You're going to sacrifice a lot of other juice. There's some people that just run the green food just to get a huge, massive magic pool and almost no health. You could do that, but you'd be sacrificing a lot. So I would say stick with that. If you can't afford the gold food, you could always go with something like this: magic recovery, stamina recovery, health recovery. That's going to make you pretty tanky all around, but you're going to lose out about 3,000 health. So try to find the sweet spot, about 22, 23k health. You have to sacrifice some attribute points. And then about 1,200, it seems like, recovery till you get the hang of it is really good. Once you get the optimal gear sets and so on, you can switch it out. And then potions are pretty obvious. If I'm not doing boss rounds, I'm just going to farm something over and over, I'll just use trash bots. I get a 28 second, it's on a 45 second cooldown, so magic regeneration. As an Argonian, I'm just going to pop these things on cooldown pretty much just all the time. And then when I'm doing the harder end content, I'm going to go with the spell power potions, which, where'd they go? They're going to be my buffs that I don't have on my bar. So I only got 48 of them on this guy. Major sorcery, 20% spell damage for 47 seconds, even though the cooldown's 45. I combine that with the Dawn's Wrath ability to get the minor. And then I got major prophecy, so I don't have to slot inner light. And then obviously the magic recovery. And it lasts, obviously, all these three things, 45 seconds. So it's really imperative to use this on cooldown. Also, beginners, go ahead and bring some tripods with you. It's better to pop a tripod, lose some damage, than die. So when in doubt, pop a tripod instead of dying. It's just much, much better. You can experiment with poisons. Not so much for damage, but maybe more for sustain. But in the context of PvE, I would really prefer just an enchant. A lot of uptime on that enchant. If you can, get this thing off. I don't know why that poison's on there. I was doing PvP. But you can see infused here, 5 second, massive, massive buff. So you hit this, and we're at 3,500 on the front bar. We hit this on our back bar, and we swap again. We're going to be close to 4K unbuffed. So that's why I really like those enchants. Plus, this thing procs, the light attack with this flame damage enchant alone can hit really, really hard. So I would just drop the poisons. I wouldn't worry about them. Stick with the enchants, in my opinion. My champion point loadout. So real quickly, I'm going to talk about priorities. On my website, I have a CP list of 1,200. I will do my best to have lower and higher ones as I become more familiar with it. But for right now, I'm just going to talk to you about the priorities and what I would go after. Priority here, increase out of combat movement speed. These really don't affect your combat per se on what we're doing in VMA and Vate. So, feel free to go whatever you want. If this guy's a crafter for you, do crafting ones. But the steed here is one I always go for. Treasure Hunter, I definitely go for. It makes grinding gear, especially false gods, I'm looking at you, 1,000 bazillion times easier. Rationer, add minutes to duration of food eaten. That can save you some time and money. And when you use a potion or a poison, you have a 10% chance of not consuming it. Save you time and money. So consider this more or less convenience and not so much really that functional for combat. Speaking of functional for combat. Okay, blue, warfare. Priorities here. Offensive priorities are precision, crit chance, fighting finesse, crit damage and crit healing. When we go in here, extended might, piercing. Piercing is very valuable for what we're doing because we're playing solo. So every ounce of offensive penetration is very good. If you're in a very well-coordinated trials group, you might have someone that completely removes all of the armor from some mobs and bosses. So then this doesn't become as impactful. Solo play, really impactful. So drill down in here, get that. And these three are pretty standard fare for a Madplar. Increased damage done with single target. We're using a lot of single targets. We're using a lot of damage over time with Thaumaturge. And we're using a lot of AoE. So those are kind of the no-brainer ones. Max magic is not as important as crit damage. Max magic would be more important if you were using damage shield or something like that in PvP. But what we're doing, we're really concerned about that crit damage, especially running Mother Sorrow with a higher crit chance. We want to optimize the amount of crit damage we're doing. And then defensively here, before we get to defensive, Eldritch Insight. This is a passive one, so you're going to want to max this out pretty quick because it gives you max magic without having a slot of it. Staving Death, this is kind of where your survivability comes into play. And the ones you're going to want to max out here, Quick Recovery isn't as relevant. I do like the healing taken. Play around with it. You might want to do only 10 points in Quick Recovery and a bunch in Hardy. But what I've noticed, the two make the biggest impact on my survivability: Preparation and Elemental Aegis. These two right here make a massive difference in your survivability. So I would say maybe play with Quick Recovery. I'm an Argonian. I like the passive self-heals and stuff, so it's very, very nice. Also, you have Pale Order Ring. This may or may not change what you're going to do. But these two here and this third one for survivability, must have. And that's kind of the blue tree. Let's go over to the red tree here. The red tree is pretty obvious type stuff. What you're trying to get, you're starting kind of here, and you're trying to get to siphon spells. Restore Magicka per stage whenever you kill an enemy. So that's kind of the bread and butter one that you want to try to get to pretty quick if you can, and plot that, because it makes a huge difference in your sustain. And then Rejuvenation grants all recovery, fantastic, Ironclad, armor, max health. So those are pretty standard fare for PvE. And then you have a bunch of different options on where you go and what you're doing. So I have Hasty, increase movement speed while sprinting. And then Sprinter I do a lot of because I don't have the False Gods. So if I had False Gods and I was much faster, I would kind of go over here. And I have Summon Defiance, Break Free. You're going to get CC'd a lot in some of these. So, let's pump that up. Yeah, get a new one. See, I'm earning them all the time. Tireless Guarding, reduce cost of blocking by 20. Stamina per stage, some of these are okay. Increase the amount of block you can do. That's pretty good. 8% block 6% block mitigation is pretty good. But really, the slottables are pretty obvious. And then what you go for is going to be kind of dependent on your gear, or if you're using a Frost Staff, or you have False Gods or not. Racial choices, I always go Argonian. Is it the best? No. Is it the worst? I don't think so. But play what you like. Ultimately, going from a high elf to an Argonian, going from a Khajiit to a orc, going from this to that is really not going to make that much difference in your experience. Worry about getting good at the game. Worry about having fun with the game. If you like a stupid Argonian like me because they have a tail and I even have a polymorph for covered up, but I just like it. So that's what I play. If you want like mid-max god tier, you're probably going to go high elf or something like that. But I don't know. I don't concern myself with it because I'm not doing the bleeding edge stuff. If you're starting brand new, I love Argonian because I can play both classes and have a good resourcefulness. This is why I can play both types. I can play stamina, I can play Magicka, I can switch in between. I don't have to try to change my race and spend $15 all the time to reroll a new character. It's very, very useful, especially Life Matter, increase your healing done by 6%. Those two things make Argonian for me an all-around no-brainer. Plus, they look cool and I like the dang thing, so I'm going to stick with it. But now, that's kind of the overall build. Let's do a Vaitshram narration fight. It takes a long time. We're going to go over the last boss in bit. I'm going to walk you through what I'm doing, what I'm thinking. It's going to take some time, but I want you to see the gameplay. I mean, before we do that, I want to kind of go over the rotation and how I actually play this puppy. The basic premise here is you can do Elemental Drain, apply that debuff, and outside of combat. So as you're closing the distance, you can put that on someone. You get close to closing the distance here, you can start with a Blazing Spear. Okay? Your blockade goes down, and then you bar swap. Once I get to this first bar swap after doing the 3, Blazing Spear, blockade, barrage. Now I'm going to try Purifying Light. So when I go 1, 2, and about 3 sweeps, when I go to my back bar, Blazing Spear's out, so is blockade, so is that. Then when I go to my front bar, guess what? Purifying Light. So the 6 seconds on the Purifying Light is really handy because by the time you cast these 3 buffs, it's down. So almost instinctively what you're going to do, once you get the hang of this, you're not under pressure and you have to cast a defensive. 1, 2, 3, and whichever order you cast it. Typically I start with Blazing Spear as I close the distance. Then Purifying Light, assuming your Elemental Drain's up. And then you're going to go do maybe a couple sweeps. 2, 3 sweeps, you're going to go back, and guess what? These will be on off timer now again. So you're going to do 1, 2, 3, bar swap. This will be down. So actually it's quite easy. In between your fights, or in between casting buffs and debuffs, Puncturing Sweeps is your main spammable. And then once they get to around, allegedly around 40%, but I would rebuff and get ready for a big burn, depending on how much the boss health has. If you see a mob in Kragorn and it has, 40% health, well, yeah, 1 beam's going to kill it. If it has 3.4 million, you're going to be beaming for a while. So I would make sure that it is relative to what HP threshold. And then Elemental Drain, try to keep that up at all times, and Light Attack weave in between. Consuming Trap is kind of that flex spot. If you're good on sustained, you could put Inner Light here for tons and tons of max magic and do a good job with that. But this is what I use for sustain. So again, let's go again. You can put Channel Focus down here, but really we're going to wait till we get up there. Blockade, however you do it. Drain. This is basic here. See, bar swap. I'm going to put my focus down. Purifying. Light Attack in between. Purifying's about to go down, so guess what? Spear. Blockade. And you're casting a little bit sooner than it needs to be, but you'll get the hang of the one that actually is. So, Drain. Spear. Blockade. See, we timed that a lot better there. Purifying Light. See, I should have did a Purifying Light first. About 3. Bar swap. 1, 2. Focus. Purifying. And so get the hang of this. I actually need to come here and do this more often because you can see how handy it is. 1, 2, 3. And drain. And do light attacks if you can. Oh. Okay. And sometimes the animations are a bit rough. So about 3. And bar swap. And channel. So this is pretty much it. Now, this is on a target dummy. So obviously that's not the same as bait and all that. So, you're going to have a million things going on and stuff that's hitting you. And that's when you're going to reflectively cast Harness Magic. Beforehand, you're going to cast Consuming Trap on the mobs to sustain. But in general, it gives you a good idea of what to do. As you're taking damage, if you're in a high intensity fight, you bar swap back, hit Harness Magic first. It's better than dying. Trust me, I've ate crap just by trying to get all these buffs down and forgetting what the hell I'm doing. So if you hit Harness, then you go apply those 3 or the 4-1, then you go back up, and you can start ripping it again with Puncturing Sweeps to get those heals back up, or do a beam to get those heals back up. Even consider Consuming Trap. So, quick rundown. Let's see it in action with, judging my gameplay. That's always fun. Let's see how this Gladiator works. Alright, final boss of Vate, and we got 1.8 milli health. If you don't know this fight, it's kind of complex. It really has a lot of adds, a lot of high intensity. So, the approach I'm taking here is not straight out, all out DPS. The approach I'm taking here is getting rid of adds, slow and steady, taking my time. So right there, I don't stack them all up. Instead, I bring them here. And you can see, this archer comes out, I'm just going to go off the boss, take care of the adds because I don't have all that self-healing and sustain. And then I dropped a meteor. The reason the meteor was dropped there is because I can get the stun off. It's better to stun the archer than get insta-killed. And then we got these little critters over here. So the 3 ground effects with Solar Barrage, 1 or 2 sweeps into a beam, Grothar procs. That's how you meet the damage threshold. Then you get back on the boss, do the ground effects. So you can see those ground effects are critical. Elemental Drain goes up. My sustain's looking pretty good. We got a critter coming up. He just clubbed me, did about half my health. But with 1 sweeps, and you could use a harness, you can protect yourself. So once we get this boss down, we're going to have to transit over to one of these shrines. So hypothetically, you want to save an ultimate, because when you get in there, the boss is going to heal up based on how long you're in there. So the faster you get those adds down in that stage, the faster this goes. That's really your primary focus during this time. So again, not focused solely entirely on the boss, taking it slow and steady. I got a nice speed run going. Just do a little beam here. If you were really proficient at this, you could just push through the boss, but I don't feel comfortable doing that, and that's okay. If you don't, do what you feel comfortable with. It's better getting a completer and getting a complete than not. So this fight will go much, much faster the more comfortable you get, just like VMA and anything else. When you know the mechanics, you can push through, your damage is optimized, goes really well. Okay, throwing some spears, get my ground effects on. And she transits here. What I've noticed is try to get her in the middle. It makes the fight a lot easier. And now she's getting close to that 0%. So we need to look around for the portals and get ready. And I'm not so worried about that guy coming because I know he's going to go away. Come on, go, grapple. Okay, got it. Hit the right button. Now we got Crazy Man here, 700k. So I'm going to buff, drop my ground effects, and then I got Dusty up. So here we go. Dusty's up. Get a nice little nuke on him. And you can see he's getting real close to being executable, 40-30%. So I'm going to reapply those ground effects. I'm going to backpedal up and just beam him out. And then I'm putting my back towards the teleporter so I can save just a little bit of time. Here we are back again. I don't see any adds up, so I'm going to try to get my ground effects going, my solar barrage. And then, oh, crazy people coming. All right, so same thing. Ground effects, priority. One sweep or so, and that will beat the DPS check. So when in doubt, the three things you need to keep up: solar barrage, elemental blockade, and then a spear. Solar barrage probably priority number 1, elemental blockade priority number 2, and then spear if you have the juice or you have the ability to do it. Also, don't be afraid to take these sigils. I think I take a couple sigils here because I don't want to do this again. So don't be afraid to do that. If you're learning how to do these fights, it's better to get it complete and get something more defensive or a little bit more healing, a little bit more damage, and get it done. And then once you learn, you improve. And then you can start relying more on your gear or your skill to basically get through this. So about to get 0%. I'm trying to position myself to the next portal spawn. Come on, lady. There we go. Got me transited here. Okay, same thing here, 770,000, and we're going to drop it here. And usually I save the red one for last. So green, blue, red is what has been helpful. I've only done this 3 or 4 times, but this one seems to be really easy. They get into a channel that can be bashed and interrupted, like that, bang. So then you bash them, about 25%. We can beam them out, start backpedaling. There we go. There's a little portal. Let's go. Last one. The last one is tough. The last red one here. So I'm trying to put myself back in the middle. That way the lady kind of comes back to where her spawn is. And then I got my ground effects down. You can see the basic mechanics here. Ground effects, ground effects, ground effects. If our ground effects are down, blockade, spear, and then we got solar barrage up, things just die. It's pretty good. So you're not relying so much on sweeps. You're relying a lot more on ground effects for damage. Sweeps is a way to do damage and also heal yourself. So think of it as that. Purifying Light is not mainly for like the very quick, easy death adds. It's mainly for the boss and then like these hard Bone Colossus ones. They're going to survive right away. So don't be casting on ads that are going to die right away. Consider casting Consuming Trap. That way it'll do a little bit of damage over time, but also give you back some sustain. This is the hard dude. So he hits really hard and he has a mage. So I try to... What you want to do is stack the guy on top of the mage, do ground effects, and then just nuke him down. So I died about 30 bazillion times with that stupid effect, so I'm not going to mess with it. You can see the mage cast, bad timing. I just spam harness. Just spam it. Just spam it. Just spam it. So, when in doubt, spam harness. It'll get you through a lot. Now he's down about 30%. I got Purifying Light that went off on him, so I can beam him out. Purifying Light will get me healed, along with the beam, pretty well. And now we're back in here, okay? So, oh, my heart's beating. I'm getting nervous. Deltia, we're going to beat this thing. It's been like a 20-minute fight. And you can speed this up a lot once you start getting used to this. And I will definitely once I get all the gear and get used to running this over and over. Just like VMA. Just takes time. So ground effects, beam them out. And you'll notice I haven't cast Harness a whole lot because I'm doing a lot of damage. There, I missed the channel. So I'm going to bash. And Consuming Trap. Oh, Archer hit me. So I'm not going to mess around with this and die. I'm just going to spam this. And I'm just going to get the heal. I don't want to redo this and do 15 more minute fighting. So there we go. Purifying Light. Now I got a Purifying Light down. I got a Consuming Trap up. So when these ads go down, we'll be doing real good. Also, I did consider just nuking the boss at this point, but I'm just not that good at this yet. So I just figured, okay, let's just take our time. We're doing good. We're on a speed run anyways. And just get these ads down. And we clear them out. They're not going to perfectly stack up. And the boss is at 27%, but I don't want to channel a cast, a heavy attack, an archer to pop up, and I just ruin this whole thing. So very simple here. And if you can get the people to stack on top of each other, obviously the better. But it's not always the case. And of course, the crazy people spawn because I'm taking too long. The boss at 13%, 100k health. And then the bone guy comes. Oh no. Oh. 8k health. Oh, Harness spam. Harness spam, dude. Just sweeps your Templar. Go. Look at that. Go, go, go. Dodge. Oh, dude, that was so good. Sorry. Anyways, I'm getting a shield. I'm not doing this again. We're not doing a 15-minute fight again. But you can see the power of Harness. In between, just did one sweep to get my stuff up, and bang, dunked on her, baby. Hell yeah. And that's a build. Fantastic. I love playing this way. You can modify it to play VMA. No champion points. There's tons and tons of gear options and ways to tune this for the way you play. But I hope you watched this and enjoyed and learned something, because I learned a lot making it and getting better at my mag part and learning a lot about PvE. So I appreciate y'all watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, click them alerts on, and consider becoming a member so I can produce more Elder Scrolls Online content.